Reborn, I was no longer the girl who cried in the rain. I was the storm. And this time, they would break before I ever did. They say you only see a person's true nature when you have nothing left to offer them. I learned that in the worst way possible. Before I was reborn. Before the power, the cold clarity, and the war I waged in silence. I was in love. Hopelessly, recklessly in love. With him. The man who smiled like he could make the world spin in reverse. The man everyone adored. The man I thought would become my husband. I didn't just love him, I revolved around him. Every decision, every compromise, every sacrifice, I made it for him. And slowly, I disappeared. We met in the safe, glittering walls of high society. Introduced by family friends at a holiday gala. He wore a white suit and a practiced smirk. I wore naivete like a perfume. He said things like, "You're the only one here who looks like she belongs somewhere better." And I believed him. Our courtship was a spectacle. Lavish vacations, paparazzi snapshots, red carpet events with matching designer outfits. We were a brand, more than a couple. And still, I believed we were in love. Or maybe I just wanted it to be love badly enough to ignore what it really was. Possession, presentation, performance. He proposed on my 22nd birthday, rented out an entire rooftop garden, filled it with candlelight and drones programmed to form a ring in the sky. It looked like a dream, but the ring he placed on my finger was tight. It didn't fit. Neither did the life I was about to step into. The wedding planning was intense. My mother obsessed over every detail. His mother controlled the guest list. The press leaked our theme before I even approved it. I should have seen it then. How little say I had in a life I was supposed to co-create. But I smiled, posed for photos, and told everyone how excited I was. Even when I caught glimpses of messages on his phone that weren't meant for me. I can't wait until it's just us again. Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything? When I confronted him, he said it was nothing, just a clingy ex, a misunderstanding. And I wanted to believe him more than I wanted the truth. Because the truth would mean unraveling everything. The wedding, the families, the image. And I had already sacrificed too much to walk away. The pressure built quietly, like static behind every conversation. He began skipping meetings with the planners. He canceled our honeymoon reservations, said we'd figure it out after the merger. Everything was always after, and I was always waiting. Then the rumors started. That he was seen with someone else. A woman with familiar eyes. A laugh I'd grown up hearing. My cousin, Clarice. I confronted her too. She cried. Said it wasn't what I thought. Said she would never do that to me. And maybe she even meant it at the time. But it didn't stop her. 2 weeks before the wedding, I started getting sick. Stress, they said. Nerves. All brides go through this. But it felt like something was wrong on a soul-deep level. Like my body knew I was walking into a trap. I tried to back out once. Told my mother I wanted to postpone. She looked at me like I had said I wanted to burn down the house. Honey, this is what we've built toward. This wedding is bigger than you. And maybe it was. But I didn't care anymore. I just wanted out. But I didn't run. Because deep down, I still hoped he'd choose me. That he'd remember who we used to be. That this, we, still meant something. The morning of the wedding, it rained. Heavy, silver rain that soaked the pavement and blurred the skyline. I took it as a sign. Maybe even a second chance. But I got dressed anyway. Hair, makeup, veil. Pearls stitched into the train of my gown. I looked like every little girl's fantasy. But I didn't feel like a bride. I felt like a prisoner walking herself to the guillotine. Then came the silence. The ceremony was delayed. 10 minutes. Then 20. Then 45. My father stopped looking at me. My mother paced in circles, muttering about weather and nerves. Finally, someone stepped forward. Face pale, phone still in hand. He's not coming. My breath stopped. He left with Clarice. A driver saw them at the airport. My knees buckled. I didn't fall. I didn't scream. I just went still. As if some part of me already knew this was how it would end. The media had a field day. The scorned heiress. The runaway groom. The cousin. I was the punchline of every tabloid, the face of every headline. Worse than the betrayal was the silence that followed. No apology, no explanation. Just a cold, quiet erasure. He had discarded me like a season gone out of fashion. And I wanted to die. Not literally, but I wanted to vanish. To never hear my name whispered in pity again. I spent weeks hiding, blinds drawn, screens off, staring at walls that still held our engagement photos. One night, I put the wedding dress back on, I wanted to know what it felt like to finally scream while wearing it. But I didn't scream. I walked out into the rain, collapsed in the garden where he had first kissed me, and I cried. Cried like the rain would wash it all away. Cried until I felt nothing. Then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the garden anymore. I was in my bedroom, 2 years earlier, alive, untouched, reborn. I once believed love meant sacrifice, that if you gave someone enough of your heart, they'd be careful with it. That devotion could heal wounds, build futures, and hold broken promises together. But I learned the hard way. Sacrifice means nothing to a man who believes you're disposable. James Holloway was my everything, once. My fiancé, my first love, my supposed partner in building an empire. He wore affection like an accessory, draped over his arm when the cameras flashed, discarded behind closed doors. He cheated, lied, took what he needed, and left me bleeding on the floor in a wedding gown that cost more than my childhood home. I was supposed to walk down the aisle that day. Instead, I watched him walk away. With my cousin. The betrayal was public. The humiliation was broadcast across every social feed and scandal blog. His PR team buried the worst of it, but not before the image of me, tear-stained and alone, became a meme. The girl who got replaced. The broken heiress. The fool. But that girl died the moment the doors closed on that ruined chapel. And the woman I became, she didn't forget. When I opened my eyes, I was gasping for breath. Like surfacing from a nightmare I had already lived. Everything felt off. My bed sheets were different. My tablet still had the outdated operating system. The calendar read June 15th, 2 years before the wedding. My heart thudded in my chest. I stumbled to the mirror. Same face, same long black hair, same world. But a second chance. I didn't know why or how. I didn't care. All I knew was that I had been reborn. The first time I saw James again, this version of him, I almost laughed. He looked younger, less polished. Still charming, still dangerous in that golden boy way. He didn't know what I knew. That in 2 years, he would betray me. That the ring he gave me meant nothing. But I smiled. Played the part. When he leaned in to kiss my cheek, I turned slightly, so he missed. "Headache," I said. "Didn't sleep well." "Stress from the engagement party?" he asked. I nodded, pretending to be flustered. But in my mind, I was planning. I moved quickly. Within days, I canceled the wedding planning committee. Told my parents I wanted to take a sabbatical to travel, to understand who I was outside of marriage and money. They were surprised but supportive. My mother, especially, gave me a long, curious look. "You're not the same," she said. "I'm finally awake," I answered. I expected resistance. What I got was quiet approval. Perhaps, deep down, they had seen what I refused to admit the first time around, that James wasn't right for me, that I had been slowly losing myself. I kept my distance from James, citing spa retreats and wellness centers, but in reality, I was building. Every night, I scribbled down ideas in a notebook I hid beneath the floorboards. Ideas for a company of my own, a future untouched by his hands. I spent my days researching, learning everything I'd ignored the first time around. Contracts, corporate law, venture capital. Knowledge became my armor, and soon I wasn't scared of him anymore. The turning point came at the Holloway Annual Gala. It was our first public appearance since I'd stepped back from wedding planning. The media buzzed with speculation, but we posed for photos like everything was fine. Except I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to meet someone else. Grayson Vale. The man who, in my previous life, had been little more than a silent fixture at board meetings. Too rich to impress, too cold to approach. But now I saw him clearly. Grayson was more than the heir to the Vale empire. He was a strategist, someone who understood power, manipulation, and timing. He didn't chase attention. Attention gravitated toward him. He stood alone at the edge of the ballroom, sipping something dark, wearing a tailored black suit like a second skin. And this time, I approached him. "You don't look like someone who enjoys galas," I said. He glanced at me, unimpressed. "You don't look like someone who speaks to strangers." "Maybe I'm changing." He looked me over, slow and sharp. "Maybe." That night, something shifted. Grayson didn't smile, didn't flirt, but he watched. Watched the way James touched my back. Watched the way I subtly leaned away. Watched the performance, and I think he understood what I was doing before I even knew it myself. The days that followed were a blur of preparation. I began buying out the silent shares James would later try to manipulate. I invested quietly, moved funds under shell companies, and began designing the foundations of what would become my company, Noir Future. No one noticed, except Grayson. He sent a single text days later. "You're cleaning house. Don't forget the attic." Cryptic, unsettling, accurate. And then, like clockwork, James began to unravel. He didn't like the distance, didn't like that I had opinions, didn't like that I was no longer orbiting his sun. "Are we okay?" he asked one night, voice low and sugary. I smiled. "We're perfect." He exhaled in relief. But in my head, I was already gone. The lies we tell are rarely as dangerous as the truths we bury. James Holloway buried plenty, and I had dug them all up in my past life, too late. But now I was rewriting the ending, one detail at a time. The shift in our dynamic was subtle at first. He still kissed my cheek in public, still texted good morning with heart emojis, but I no longer responded with the same urgency. I left him on red. I forgot to call back. I stopped asking how his meetings went. I stopped pretending I cared. And the more I pulled back, the more tightly he clung. "Are you seeing someone else?" he asked one night. I raised an eyebrow. "Are you?" He laughed, uneasy. "You're different lately, distant. Maybe I finally realized I don't need to apologize for breathing." His smile faltered. Good. Meanwhile, Grayson Vale began to appear in my life with quiet regularity. At first, he was just a ghost in boardrooms, a myth at shareholder galas, the kind of man who only spoke when silence wasn't enough. But now, he was present. Intentional. I'd find myself seated next to him at dinners I hadn't known he'd be attending. His family had fingers in every tech firm across Asia, so his presence was never questioned, only respected. He never said much, but when he did, his words hit like iron. "You're shedding skin," he said once at a business forum. "Is that your way of saying I look tired?" "It's my way of saying you're dangerous now." I laughed. "Why does that sound like a compliment?" "Because it is." Grayson was unlike anyone I had ever known. While James fed off praise, Grayson thrived in silence. He didn't need to prove himself to anyone. He already knew who he was. Cold, brilliant, brutally direct. And yet, there was something quietly protective in the way he acted around me. Not sweet, not kind, but aware. One night, I was reviewing documents alone in a rooftop lounge when he appeared, uninvited, with a glass of sake. "Your supplier's name is hidden under a dummy shell," he said. I blinked. "You looked into my startup? You're building something that might challenge me." Of course I looked. "And if I am?" He stared at me. "Then I'll either buy you out or stand beside you." My breath caught. "I haven't decided yet," he added. Back home, I began removing more pieces of my past. Clarice, my cousin, the one James would eventually leave me for, was still in the picture. Smiling, beautiful, innocent. She hadn't betrayed me yet, but she would. And I couldn't forget that. So I tested her. I left a single folder on my desk during a brunch visit. Inside were false documents, contracts for a fake startup partnership. Within a week, those exact ideas showed up in a presentation by her boyfriend. She was already slipping. I confronted her without warning, at a spa. Tranquil music, cucumber water. "You stole my designs," I said, wrapping myself in a robe. She gasped. "What?" "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence, Clarice." Her face paled. "It must have been a coincidence. You haven't even asked what I'm accusing you of." Silence. Then, "Are you going to tell James?" I smiled. "Not yet." She looked relieved. "And not because I want to protect you," I added, "but because I want him to fall harder when the time comes." She froze. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Good. As my startup gained momentum, I began attracting attention from media and investors. Nothing major yet, but whispers. James was losing control. He began texting more, calling, trying to reconnect. "You're so busy these days," he said. "Are you sure we're still aligned for the future?" "We're evolving," I told him. He didn't understand what I meant. At an exclusive fashion tech gala, I arrived wearing a prototype from my new line, adaptive fabric laced with reactive LEDs that changed tone in response to biometric data. The design screamed innovation. James barely noticed. But Grayson? He walked straight up to me, eyes lingering on the fabric. "You're broadcasting confidence," he said. "Am I?" "You're also broadcasting that your heart rate spikes when I get this close." I rolled my eyes. "You're ridiculous." But I was also blushing. Damn him. Later that night, we shared drinks in a glass elevator that overlooked the city skyline. Tokyo below us buzzed in streaks of blue and neon white. You never asked why I walked up to you at the gala, I said. I assumed you had a plan. I always have a plan. Even now, I hesitated. Right now, I just needed to breathe. He nodded slowly. Then I'll stand here and be quiet. And he did. That was the thing about Grayson. He didn't fill silences. He made them sacred. Back at home, I reviewed financial statements. James's name showed up on a series of bad investments. And then I saw it. He had started buying into tech firms using Clarissa's father's money. Risky moves. Desperate moves. Just like last time. He was already falling apart. So early. So easy. The next morning, Hannah messaged me. You were right. He's asking questions. About who you've been meeting with. About Grayson. I stared at the screen, expression unreadable. Then I typed back. Let him wonder. Power, once lost, doesn't return quietly. It shatters glass and claws through flesh on its way back to the throne. James Holloway was unraveling, and I was the one holding the thread. I used to think heartbreak made people weak. That betrayal turned you into something fragile. But I was wrong. It made me sharper, clearer, cold enough to step over the man I once loved and still feel nothing but focus. Word had begun to spread about Noir Future. A Tokyo-based investor group contacted me for an early showcase. I knew their names. In my past life, they had laughed me out of the room, dismissed me as James's little ornament. This time, I walked into the meeting with Grayson at my side. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. His presence alone was enough to make the room sit up straight. I pitched, seamless, focused, commanding, and they listened. When we walked out, one of the investors murmured to the other, She's not someone's fiancé anymore. She's a threat. That was the first time I truly smiled. Later, over drinks, Grayson raised a glass. To your enemies, he said. I raised mine in return. May they choke on their own arrogance. We clinked. His eyes didn't leave mine. You were made for more than James Holloway, he said. I was made for war, I whispered. He didn't argue. The next few weeks moved quickly. I hired a small team, tight-lipped, loyal, and brilliant. Hannah proved herself. Every time I fed her a piece of false information, she kept it sealed. Every time I gave her a task, she completed it without question. She was rebuilding my trust, and I was rebuilding a future. But James wasn't done. He showed up at one of my office spaces, uninvited, smug, and fake sincere. You've been busy, he said, walking through my prototype showroom like he owned it. I've always been busy, I replied. You just never noticed. He chuckled. Don't do this. We're stronger together. We were never strong. You just liked when I was silent. His jaw clenched. You're throwing away everything we had, he said. There's nothing left to throw. I walked him to the door. Before he left, he turned back. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you'll regret crossing me. I stared at him, calm and composed. I already regret loving you. Grayson appeared that evening, unplanned, unannounced. He stood at my door with 2 glasses and a bottle of 30-year Yamazaki. He came to you, he said, not asking. He's getting desperate. Grayson poured the drink. I've seen men like him, he said. They don't back down until they lose everything. Then he'll lose everything, I replied. We sat in silence for a while, watching the lights of the city blink like distant stars. Why are you helping me? I asked quietly. Grayson didn't flinch. Because I don't like watching good plans die, he said. And because I hate watching women like you break when men like him rise. You don't even like me? Don't mistake silence for disinterest, he said. Then, after a pause, I admire people who rebuild themselves from ash. The next day, Hannah burst into my office. He's spreading rumors, she said breathlessly. Says Grayson's manipulating you, that your company is just a front. I laughed. Let him try, let him scramble. Let him throw mud at a wall made of diamond. I crafted a response, a subtle media interview, published quietly, where I credited my growth to failure and rebirth. No names, no slander. Just enough truth to silence his lies. But Clarice was more dangerous. She still had connections, her father's wealth, her own network of socialites. She began throwing private parties again, whispering poison into the ears of powerful women. She's unstable, she told them. This whole fashion tech thing is just a phase. One of her moles leaked details about my next launch. It didn't matter. I shifted everything, delayed the reveal, built anticipation. Grayson warned me. She's preparing something bigger. So am I. And then came the night I decided to end it. The Vale Foundation hosted an annual winter gala. Strict guest list, no press inside, just industry titans and legacy families. I walked in wearing a custom piece from Noir Future, a floor-length black gold gown that adjusted its cut with every movement. Fluid, elegant, and undeniably powerful. I knew I looked like a queen, because I was. And when James saw me across the ballroom, he froze. He approached, trying to smile. "You're glowing," he said. "I've missed you." I tilted my head. "Funny, I haven't thought about you in weeks." He tried to make a scene, whispered threats, asked if Grayson was using me. That's when Grayson walked over, calm and deadly. "She's not someone you use," he said. "She's someone you fear." James tried to stand tall. Grayson stepped closer. "You're done," he said, "and you know it." That night, under falling snow on the Vale rooftop, I asked Grayson the question I'd been holding for weeks. "Would you still help me if I had nothing left to offer?" He looked at me for a long, silent moment. "I already have." I once dreamed of marrying James Holloway under a sky of floating lanterns. Now I dreamed of watching him fall, publicly, painfully, and permanently. It wasn't revenge for revenge's sake, not anymore. It was justice, for the girl I used to be, for every sacrifice made in silence, for the future I had finally built with my own hands. After the winter gala, the world began to whisper, "Did you see her dress? She's with Grayson Vale now?" I heard James's company is bleeding investors. I didn't have to say anything. I let the silence speak, because I knew something James didn't. Power doesn't shout, it whispers. He tried to get ahead of the narrative, hosted a press conference, announced a new business direction, dropped vague mentions of betrayal and manipulation. But I had already seen this game play out before. This time, I was holding the deck. And Grayson? He began pulling strings I didn't even know existed. Silent buyouts, canceled licensing deals, old debts called in. One by one, James's foundation cracked. I barely had to lift a finger. One evening, Grayson and I sat in a private lounge at the top of the Vale Tower. No press, no guards, just us and the stars. He handed me a folder. "What's this?" "Proof that James falsified profit reports for 2 quarters, enough to trigger a financial investigation." I flipped through the documents. Every page was a nail in James's coffin. "I didn't ask for this," I said. "I know. But I'll use it." Grayson raised his glass. "To the beginning of the end." That week, I launched Noir Future officially. The virtual runway show went viral. Adaptive gowns modeled in real time by AI. Seamless blend of function, fashion, and code. The world paid attention. The investors paid more. I was no longer James Holloway's forgotten bride. I was her. He showed up outside the showroom 3 days later, eyes bloodshot, voice raw. "You ruined me." I looked him over like an expired credit card. "No," I said. "You did that yourself. I just stopped saving you." "You were supposed to love me forever." "I did," I said, "and you burned it." He reached for my arm. That's when Grayson appeared. Fast, silent. His hand gripped James's wrist with steel precision. "Touch her again," Grayson said, low and final. "And you'll never touch anything again." James yanked his arm back, shaking with rage. "You're both monsters." "No," I said. "We're survivors." Later that night, on Grayson's rooftop, I let myself finally breathe. "It's done," I whispered. He said nothing, but I could feel it in the air. Something had shifted. I turned to him. "Do you think I've become cruel?" He considered this. "No," he said. "I think you finally became honest." I nodded. "I didn't plan on falling in love again." His eyes flicked to mine. "You haven't," he said. "You are in love." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The next morning, news broke. James Holloway under investigation for fraud and financial misconduct. Clarice Holloway flees to Europe amid scandal. Noir Future closes Series A at $30 million valuation. I didn't smile, but I felt something else. Peace. Grayson came by the office that evening, dressed down for once. No suit, no tension, just a man standing still in the afterglow of war. "I brought something," he said, handing me a small white box. Inside was a ring, not a diamond, not a proposal, just a simple band of black titanium. "For protection," he said. "For power, for you." I put it on. "I don't want a savior," I said. "You don't need one," he replied, "but you've got me anyway." That night, I wrote in my journal, I thought I'd be satisfied when he broke. But satisfaction wasn't the goal. Freedom was. And I've never felt lighter than I do now. People whispered behind closed doors. She used to be James's fiancée. Now she's the CEO of a tech empire. Is she with Grayson Vale? Or are they just aligned? Let them wonder. Let them speculate. I had stopped living for their stories the moment I stopped trying to survive someone else's script. Now I was writing my own. Weeks passed. Noir Future exploded globally. Partnerships in Seoul, Shanghai, and Paris. Fashion magazines that once ignored me now fought for interviews. Influencers begged for early access to our adaptive couture. But even with all the success, I kept my circle tight. Hannah, now my head of strategy, proved her loyalty every single day. I still think about what I did. Before, she said one night over tea. I forgave you, I said, but I haven't forgiven myself. That's not my burden to carry anymore. She nodded, silent, grateful. James disappeared from public life. Clarice too. The Holloways had gone from dynasty to cautionary tale in less than a year. And yet, I felt no joy in their downfall. Only clarity. Some stories aren't about revenge. They're about release. One afternoon, I found myself alone with Grayson on the top floor of Vale Tower, where everything began. He stood at the glass, watching Tokyo's endless skyline pulse with light and motion. I walked up beside him. Do you ever think about the past? I asked. All the time, he said, but never with regret. Why not? Because it taught me exactly who I needed to become. I looked at him. I think I loved you before I even knew what your voice sounded like, I whispered. Grayson turned gently, like he already knew. And I think I knew you before you knew yourself. We kissed. Not like a fairy tale, not like a movie. Like two people who had earned the right to breathe in peace. Like survivors, like equals. Our love wasn't loud. It was steady, quiet. The kind of love that didn't ask for proof because it was already written in the way we stood beside each other when the storms came. They say people change when they get power. But I didn't change. I returned to the version of me I was always meant to become. Before the lies, before the heartbreak, before I dimmed my light for someone else's comfort. Now, I shine unapologetically. And if that blinds them, they were never meant to see me anyway. I wasn't reborn to ruin James Holloway. I was reborn to reclaim myself. And somewhere along the way, I found a man who didn't try to fix me, only stood beside me while I fixed myself. So this isn't a story about a girl who got revenge. This is the story of a woman who remembered who she was and decided to never forget again.